Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for cash tags. For that, let's bring in our next guest. That's going to be Landon Swan. He's a co-founder at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Landon.
Thanks. Great to be here.
All right. So this is a good stock to talk about just because it's had a good run so far this year. If you break it out over a 3-year chart, maybe it doesn't look as good because the stock hit over $250 at one point. But it's still growing, Landon. I think that's key. They're not profitable yet, which is still a problem, but they're on that path to profitability. And the CEO said last quarter that, hey, they're not seeing a slowdown in consumer demand for delivery, even though it seems like inflation's hitting everybody and everybody complains about the fees and the costs of delivery from some of these providers like DoorDash. Do you have data that supports this rebound rally that we've seen?
Yeah, I think one of the key parts of that is, there is definitely pressure on restaurants. Consumers are squeezed more, but generally speaking, the customers that are, the DoorDash or the Uber Eats customers are usually more affluent, and they care less about the cost and they care more about the convenience, the speed, the selection, things like that. So I think it's going to hit them a little bit less. And for those that are maybe newer to it, there is going to be some sticker shock, and they may talk about that and they may not come back. But those with a little bit more money just say, you know what, I want my food and I want to be able to pick it out quickly and get it to me quickly. And if it costs a little more, so be it. And it's interesting because when you look at, the percentage of Americans who are using services like these, in 2020, it was about 15%, and now it's 21%. In 2020, you would think would be really high given what was going on with lockdowns. Most restaurants weren't open. And so it's incredible to see this big increase over time. And I think that, they're doing really well. When you look at their web visits in particular, that's actually one that's kind of eye-opening to us because we love Uber. Uber as the company is one of our kind of darlings. We think they're going to do really well in just moving of food, moving of people, autonomous driving, all of that. We're pretty bullish on Uber, but when we see DoorDash beating them on this change in visits on the 30-day moving average, obviously that's going to be pretty bullish for DoorDash. They already command about a 60% presence of mind share, if you will, where people are, when they think of food delivery, they think of DoorDash about 60% of the time. So that, they're dominant there. And what's interesting about this chart is this is the 30-day moving average. If you do the 90-day moving average, it's about plus 5% for DoorDash, which means that as we get tighter in and look closer to now, that number is increasing, which tells us that the success of this company is actually accelerating over the near term. So they were doing good on the 90-day, but they're doing really well on the 30-day. So that's obviously very positive. So we also know that their monthly app, their app users are up 5% on a year-over-year basis. So, doing well there. Their quarterly revenue last time was up 23%. And, their orders are up, I think, 19%. Just goes to show you, if you compare those numbers, that things are getting a little more expensive. But again, people don't care as much. So monthly active users up 5%. This is, they had a little bit of a downtrend going there that they're picking back up now. Website visits are up. And so I think things are generally going well. And so, again, we like Uber a lot, but to see DoorDash outperforming on taking their lead and expanding it is pretty bullish for us. Now, it's interesting because you talk about the stock price. It's, basically 140 or 141 right now. And, it hit a pretty hard top in March around 143. And so we're coming back up on that. Can we get through that? I don't know. We'll see. But the stock has basically doubled since October lows of around 70. The 3-year chart's not as pretty, but it's definitely having a good time right now. But how will investors react to this sort of ceiling that we've got? We still got about a month to go before we could have any great news from an earnings report. So it's going to be interesting to see how it trades over the next little bit.
Landon, it feels like we're having the same conversation about DoorDash that we did about Uber in its intermediate days, right? When it was struggling with profitability. It wasn't there yet. We weren't sure how it was going to get there. But I can tell you that adoption of getting food delivered is growing, and people are just getting more and more comfortable with getting their food delivered. Now you throw in groceries. Now you throw in international, the things they're doing in Canada. They're expanding partnerships. They just signed this one with this H Mart, which is this big Asian supermarket chain, and they keep just expanding the footprint. And Uber certainly has a geographical edge on them, right? But for some reason, DoorDash seems to be competing pretty well, like you mentioned. And is this going to be one of the days? Here's the final question. Is this going to be one of those times where all of a sudden they just, all of a sudden they just turn profitable like Uber did? All of a sudden they're just on the scene and the numbers get to that level where they turn profitable?
Yeah, that I think is going to be, once it happens, if it happens, I think it will, it's going to be a catalyst for investors because, it's kind of a gimmicky company 10 years ago. And you're like, I don't know if that's going to work. And then, they're gaining consumers, they're gaining traction. All right, yeah, but they're still not making money. And revenue's starting to go up and they're getting close to that line. You start scratching your head like, well, maybe. And then they start turning a profit and the revenues continue to go up. Adoption's going up. Users are going up. Then all of a sudden you're like, hey, you know what? This could be a home run. And you might be late to the game at that point, but that's when people start to pile in. So I definitely think that, we've got a rising tide lifting all boats situation. Like I talked about, from 15% to 21% of Americans using these services. That's not just a 6-point move. That's like a plus 30% move if you think about the number of people that are using it. And it's only going to continue to go up. And, just like we talked about with PayPal, I think the partnerships that you talked about are really key. I mean, one of the reasons that we liked Uber so much is that it wasn't just about moving people, it's moving food, it's moving things, it's that last mile delivery. And DoorDash is starting to show signs that they really understand that and that they're attacking that. So they've added beauty, they've added home improvement, they got a partnership with a mattress firm right in time for college students moving in where they can get same day delivery on a lot of things. And so it's showing that they're thinking about this as not just a food delivery company, but it's a thing delivery company. And so, it's different that they're not going to be delivering people, but they're doing everything else except for that. And so I really like the direction that this company is headed into. And so, again, we're bullish. We're a little bit more bullish on Uber, but DoorDash is obviously doing really well, and they are the clear leader. And I think a lot of it has to do with their user interface, the user experience. It's easy to order, it's easy to track. People just are used to it, and once you start using one, it's like, all right, this works for me. I'm familiar with it. They'll continue to use it, and they're expanding that lead. So normally it's a question of who's the leader, who's coming to attack them. But in this case, it's who's the leader and how much are they growing their lead by. So definitely like it here. I'm very eager to see how it reacts in this 140, 143 range between now and earnings, because if it can break through, then that's going to put some interesting pressure on earnings. If it pulls back, I think it's a great opportunity for buying dips heading into earnings.
Think about this. You get a robo-taxi or a cyber taxi out there. I mean, who's to say DoorDash can't get into the rideshare business? Right?
I think we all, people our age, have to come to the realization that this is not going away.
Yeah.
It's only going to get more, and you can stick your head in the sand and ignore it, but it's coming.
Yeah.
And the change that this is about to bring to our world is real.
Yeah.
And you better just embrace it.
Yeah. Embrace those fees. Ugh.
Embrace the change, Landon.
Embrace it.
Those damn
Oh, just
fees.
wait until there's no person in the car, and then the fees are going to go down. It's going to be unbelievable. You get what you want when you want it right now. The world's going to be a very different place. Just a question of who's up top. Is it going to be Uber? Is it going to be DoorDash? Or is there room for both? Because instead of going from 15% of Americans to 21, maybe it goes up to 30, 40, 50% of Americans using services like this, and then there's plenty of room.
Yep, and that earnings event on the 30th of October. Landon waiting for dips. All right, great stuff. As always, Landon, have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Landon Swan, co-founder of